Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 435. So, in the past, we've had many discussions about high performance, getting in the gym, getting strong. We've talked to athletes, we've talked to strength and conditioning coaches, we've talked to guys that just like to almost eat iron for breakfast instead of cornflakes. And that's what today's show is all about. We're going to be talking about the high performance environment. We're going to be talking about S&C in almost the real world, because we can all sit here and idolize perfect programs. We can talk about speed, power, strength, but what does it mean? Yes, to the athlete, but also what does it mean to that everyday person? So let's introduce today's guest. So today's guest is someone that has a massive, diverse pedigree in sport, shifted more so towards rugby, and we'll find that out in a minute. But today's guest, Keir Whenham-Flatt. Hello.
You killed that pronunciation, brother. You got it right.
I thought you were going to say the opposite.
No.
I was like, no.
No, you got it.
You free flow so much that you trip yourself up because you want to say things in a certain way. And especially if a name seems like it would read a little bit different or phonetically, you kind of just want to bowl in and, you can't.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
Mate, so dude, let's introduce you to the audience, give them a bit of background. I'll let you start where you want, but I need the meat of the journey.
God damn, right. Well, let me think. Terrible athlete growing up. Didn't want to have a real job. Realised I was never going to be a professional rugby player. Academics came quite easily to me at school. I kind of tell people that I never really worked hard until I was 25, which is fairly true. I was halfway through my master's before I pulled my finger out. I had graduated with a sports science degree from Leeds. Came to a rather shocking realization that I was a terrible coach, and I'd actually secretly become a researcher via my degree program. Not their fault. Well, maybe a little bit their fault, but mostly my fault. 2 years of the master's degree, constant failure, nagging people why I didn't get interviews, working on coaching, personal training at the same time. Got an internship at London Wasps, packed up, went to Wasps. Year full-time unpaid, year 10 grand a year, living in West London, not the best. Then I ended up being head of academy there, which wasn't good enough for me because I wanted to rise faster. So I threw my toys out the pram and went to Rotherham, where I was the head for the first team at Rotherham, which was championship at the time. Then I moved to Australia because my ex was Australian. Moved to Sydney, got very lucky, and ended up filling in for someone with the Argentinian national team for 3 months. And when I'd arrived in Sydney, I'd gone around to a bunch of different NRL clubs and kind of introduced myself, not to, ask for a job, but basically to say hello, let them know I was on the scene, and if there were any vacancies, could you please let me know when they are so I can apply like everyone else. And the Sydney Roosters, who paid no attention to me prior, once I'd started working with an international rugby team, they're like, oh, we've got this under 20s position. Would you be interested? So I got that. Again, dumb luck, right place, right time. Promoted to first team strength conditioning coach within 3 weeks. Precipitated the worst 6 months of my career. Resigned from that, more dumb luck, called up Exos cap in hand, can I have a job back, thinking I was going to get sent to China, and ended up being my own replacement because my replacement had dropped out. They said, you're going to go to the World Cup. If New Zealand offer you $1 million a year, you have to say no, you're with us all the way through. And I said, yep, no problem. Went to the World Cup. Flavor of the month, that got me a job in Japan for 2 years, Japanese rugby. And about halfway through that, I decided, I'm done with rugby, not enjoying it anymore, need a new start. So I decided, right, what do I want to do? How am I going to move the goalpost? So I decided I want to work in the NFL by the time I'm 35, which I'm probably a little bit behind schedule, but I moved to the States in January of 2018. And now I'm the director of director of athletic performance and the coordinator of football performance for College of William & Mary. And that's the FCS level of college football. So it's one level below the top tier. All the teams that non-American listeners would be familiar with. It's one level below, but it's the NCAA Division I level. And that's it, where I am now.
Got ya. So why the move to NFL? You've been in rugby for so long. Was it a challenge? Was it I haven't quite scratched an itch? Like why?
Bunch of stuff. I think, if you look at the athlete populations involved, the budgets, the size of the businesses, to me, it's unquestionably the biggest stage in sports. Um, a little bit of everybody looks to America for the standard, the model of how strength conditioning could be. And, if I can, it's a little bit, a bit of chip on my shoulder. If I can prove that I'm the best over here, I'm happy with myself. I want to prove I'm the best. I'm going to do it over here. And then it kind of removes that question of, oh, he wouldn't be that good in America or wherever. And, I got a little bit fed up with rugby. Japan, although it was very, very lucrative, it wasn't an environment that I I think I gelled very, very well with Argentinian culture. They love me, I love them. Went over to Japan, completely different, and it was not for me. So, I kind of looked at what is there left to do in rugby. I'd gone to World Cup, got to a semi-final of a World Cup, and I thought about the other countries that I could work for in international rugby. And realistically, I'm not going to work for any of those. Any of the other Southern Hemisphere teams are always going to hire somebody from their own country. If you look at the track record, England's not going to hire me because my face doesn't fit really, and I'm quite outspoken about the state of S&C in the UK. And then, the other teams, I thought, really, are they going to get to the last four of the World Cup? And is it going to go any further? No. So I'm probably not going to get any further than I already did in the World Cup. And I don't want to go back and get knocked out in the quarterfinals. Like I want to go further than I did before. So I was happy with that, put it to bed. And I didn't want to go to another rugby team and just do the same thing, because I can not do it in my sleep, but like I'm pretty comfortable now with what the situation is going to be when you arrive into a team. In the first year, it's basically just establishing good habits, establishing a culture, making sure that they understand what you're about, trying to iron out all the errors. In year two, you start to implement a couple of new ideas that aren't just super basic, start to build the structure, and then you see the progress in year three and, all that kind of stuff. So I thought, I'd rather start again at the bottom. This is the thing as well. If you're going to work in the NFL as a foreigner, you either have to get to a super high level in your sport and be prominent enough that they would recruit you to come over, which wasn't going to happen at my age. I was 31 when I began the visa process. 31, 32, 31. So I was too young for that. If you look at all of the performance directors in the big sports in America, they're not that young. Or you go over there and start again at the bottom and work your way up. And I was like, well, I'm sick of rugby. I'm relatively young now. I'm going to go over to the States and start again at the bottom and work my way up, which is what I did. So that's the reasoning behind why I made the move when I did all that kind of stuff.
Fascinating. I remember when I was a young personal trainer and I used to kind of look up to the strength and conditioning and sport world, and you always feel, because you're into fitness, you always feel that S&C has this massive influence on sport. So when I was in my second year of uni, I had a placement at Hull Rugby League team, and I was essentially the assistant S&C coach. Worked a lot with the academy kids and got to do some stuff with the first team. But obviously, like you say, you have to kind of work your way in and learn the respect of the players and the coaching staff. And you kind of have this perception that you can go in and make these athletes so strong and so resilient and so fit, they're just going to win games. And I remember speaking to fellow S&C coaches and thinking, oh, your team's at the bottom of the league at the moment. You're a shit S&C coach. And it's kind of funny. And off air, we were kind of talking about how much influence S&C has, because I think people will probably be shocked on maybe your perspective on actually the role of S&C. Like, what bandwidth do you really have with an athlete to almost make them a winner?
Zero. Not zero, but like negligible. A strength and conditioning coach or a program of physical preparation is never going to win a game or a championship. It can lose you one, it's not going to win you one. So at best, your job is to minimize the drain on performance and not get in the way of the stuff that does matter. So I'll give you an example. Go into any jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing gym, take the biggest, strongest layperson that you can find, put them in against the smallest black belt, the smallest pro boxer, the smallest pro MMA fighter, and see how it goes. And you have just had a vivid example of the impact of physical preparation compared to technical preparation, tactical preparation, and psychological preparation on performance. Of the 4 areas, it is the least important. If you can just achieve the bare minimum standard of the average players around you, the other factors are going to have a much bigger influence. So people love to, I did it the other day, they love to take shots at the dumb workouts that professional athletes do. LeBron James, Lonzo Ball, Tom Brady, that moron that's, balancing on a Swiss ball, catching all this shit. If the workouts are as bad as you say they are, and they are, how come these guys are still MVP level talents? You've just put in perspective the impact of physical preparation. Now, is it a really, really good thing if you can make Tom Brady a little bit more robust and a little bit faster and add a year to his career? It's really, really good and useful and important. But Tom Brady is Tom Brady for reasons other than physical. So I will say the caveat is the less technical, tactical a sport is, the more physical factors will have an impact on performance. But the less physical it is and the more technical, tactical, the less your impact's going to be. So can you make up for physical deficiencies technically and tactically if you're a 100-meter sprinter? No, because the only way you're going to win is by getting from point A to point B faster than the other guy. So it's hugely physical. But if you look at field-based sports, combat-based sports, there are so many ways to win, and you can be so creative in how you execute those game plans that you can be highly unimpressive physically and have quite low outputs and still dominate the competition. Because the capacity to improve in those areas is vast compared to a couple of percent physiologically.
Is that where you find you almost create some friction in the industry because you almost have that perspective? And I suppose a strength and conditioning coach would want to believe that they just have this massive impact. If they can get the athletes doing the perfect program in the gym, that it's just going to transform how that athlete performs. Is that one of the reasons there's sort of friction there in your perspective sometimes?
There's friction because people want to believe they're super important. It's like Dale Carnegie. Everybody wants to believe they're important. They love the sound of their own voice, all that kind of stuff. But you only have to look at all of these athletes with terrible off-season workouts. You only have to look at the amount of dumb cheerleader strength coaches working for high-level winning teams. And I've seen some of the programs. They're terrible. Like, I could get my interns to write a better program. But these teams continue to win. So you basically have to face up to reality. Like, you could see Usain Bolt's weight program. Even Usain Bolt, his weight training program, absolute garbage. Still broke the world record. So that probably says a lot more for selection, natural selection, mentality, technical mastery, all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit upsetting for strength coaches when you have this. You want to feel that your role is important, and then you see so many examples of how that's not the case. I kind of deviate. What was the question? So it was like,
have you created friction in the past through almost what feels like a negative kind of perspective on S&C?
A little bit, because here's the thing, right? Have you ever read Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow?
I've read half the book. I just didn't get into it, if I'm honest.
So Daniel Kahneman talks about a type 1 brain, type 2 brain, or brain 1, brain 2. Brain 1, fast judging, intuitive. Brain 2, slow, deliberative, can be trained, not instinctual. And brain 1 is responsible for a lot of biases. And one of these biases is the substitution bias, which is when you present the brain with a complex, difficult question to answer, brain 1 just jumps in and comes up with an answer. But what you secretly do is you substitute it for a simpler question. And you don't actually answer that question, you answer the simple question. And the strength and conditioning field is rife with substitution bias. We've taken really, really complex questions of how do you improve performance, which is winning. Sports performance is the science of winning. You've taken really complex questions like that and substituted it subconsciously to come up with how do you improve somebody's back squat? How do you improve somebody's VO2 max? How do you improve somebody's mass? And we have these biases where we think it matters the most. One, because we can measure it easily, and two, because we can see that we affect it with training. I'll tell you right now, what does the research on mass say? It says if you train mass, you improve mass. Is that the objective of a program of conditioning for field-based sports? Not remotely. Mass is how do you take a sub-maximal effort and sustain it indefinitely, whereas field-based sport conditioning is how do you maximize the intensity, frequency, and sustainability of high-intensity sporting action? That's a real complex question to ask. Mm-hmm. So you have all of these biases, and I think there's an inherent bias of doing that in strength conditioning. So when you actually say, due to the complex nature of performance, you can actually make an athlete significantly better at their sport, sometimes by sacrificing your favorite toys of the back squat, speed, fitness, blah, blah, blah. And I'll give you an example. I trained a guy in Japan. At university, he was the number 7 hammer thrower in the country. Working with me, his jumps went down, his strength went down, and his speed went down. But he had this massive gaping hole of aerobic ability, and he also was a terrible rugby player. So really, you need to be not happy, but accepting to see losses in your favorite areas that you feel matter the most. You sacrifice those for the overall goal of improved performance, making him more likely to win. And that's the thing. If you need to have a global perspective, and you need to have an understanding of all areas of performance, physical, tactical, technical, psychological, and understand that it's the greatest sum development of those areas that contributes to winning, not did you make somebody's back squat go up or did you make somebody's vert go up? Because even if you not have those things go down, even if you push them way up, but you spent so long trying to improve somebody's vert that they became terrible at their sport, rusty skills, not thinking about the game, fragile mentality, all that kind of stuff, they're actually going to be a worse athlete. So that's good though for me, because in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So all the time people are worried about, we got this kid that back squats this, we got this kid that sprints this. We're actually concentrating on winning. And it's like, all right, you can have that. We're going to try and have a global perspective.
So what fires you up the most about your job? Because like the first 10 minutes of this show, you kind of, people listening might be thinking, oh God, like almost what's the point of strength and conditioning? Like what are we actually doing? So with your role, like what kind of fills your cup when you're stood in front of a team? Like, do you see it as a positive experience knowing that your percentage of impact is marginal?
It's marginal if you have the hat of strength conditioning coach on.
Right.
So if people feel disheartened listening to this, good, because that's the reality. And it's like Ray Dalio, principle number 1, accept reality and deal with it. Once you accept the model of reality as it is, then you can start to understand how the moving pieces work, and then you can start to tweak them to try and actually get the system to work in your favor. So if you accept the fact that thinking in just pure physical terms is not going to have a significant impact on performance, you have to expand the envelope, and you have to realize that everything affects everything. Unless your athletes go out into the field and do a skills and tactical session and their heart rate stays exactly the same throughout the session, or if you flog them to death in running and their skills stay exactly the same, or they perform on the highest stage and their level of emotional arousal stays exactly the same, you must accept as a reality that everything affects everything. There's no such thing as skill work and strength work. They all interact, they all affect one another. So once you accept that fact, it begs the question of if everything affects everything, and you have to consider the whole picture in terms of improving performance, who's going to control that process? Because if everybody wants their pound of flesh and everybody pulls the athlete in different directions, you are not going to drive the athlete towards one ultimate objective, which is performance. And then, luckily there's 2 of us here, Eric Coram and me share that philosophy. So we've decided it's on us to coordinate all of the pieces together and understand what is it that the sport coaches are trying to achieve, what are the sports psychs trying to achieve, how can we impact logistics, how can we impact sports nutrition, how can we impact selection and recruitment to achieve those goals. So it actually gets really, really exciting if you take off the strength and conditioning hat and put on the performance hat and think about how you can be the communicator and the integrator of all those different areas. And intellectually, that is a way harder task, and it's a way more exciting task to take that on than it is to improve physical outputs, which is actually really easy to do. And, you know, in response to your question, when it's going well, there's nothing like it. You know, it will live with me until I die, walking out behind my boys to, at the time, a world record crowd for a rugby game at Wembley in the World Cup. So, I mean, you get one day like that, and it almost makes the previous 3 years of getting your pants pulled down awesome. And we did. We lost a lot.
Yeah, but to be fair, Argentina plays some of the most passionate rugby you will ever see. They are such an exciting team to watch.
Well, here's the thing. My mentor told me, your biggest strength becomes your biggest weakness. So when I came in 2013, the response was always, oh, but we're so passionate, tears in the anthem, blah, 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 blah. Should we lean on that more? Or should we say, well, actually, all of that passion doesn't appear to be helping us that much. And instead, we need to concentrate on execution of a game plan, emotional control, flawless technique, all that kind of stuff. So it's good to a point, but we actually said, nah, not good enough. We actually need to not use it as a crutch. We need to acknowledge that we have weaknesses in other areas and concentrate on that. And that, you know, having seen us compete year after year against those top three teams, you actually see as the performance increases game by game, the emotional arousal comes down every single game.
Interesting. I remember when I was working in elite sport, and I remember kind of getting like 6, 7, 8, 9 months in, and you kind of then sort of go, right, I should be getting somewhere now. I'm quite happy with the team. The program's looking good, but my impact feels low. And I remember at the time wanting to do more. Like you spoke about logistics on game day. So at the time, my qualification strength was actually in performance nutrition. It wasn't in strength and conditioning. I was developing those skills. And I remember sitting down with the head strength and conditioning coach, and I was like, do you mind if I take a bit of a closer look at the players' nutrition, especially on game day, like what they're doing when they get up, like when you're not controlling things, like what happens on the bus, what happens when they've got to go, you know, 4 hours up to Scotland and play, you know, all these different types of things. And they were like, yeah, you know, don't worry about that, Ben. Like, you know, the players have been doing what they've been doing for ages and stuff. And I think that was at the point for me where I was like, I can't have the impact that I want in this job. And do you find that's maybe where some of the frustration can come from coaches? Because if you can't fully control the impact that you want to have, ultimately you over time will feel like you just can't do your job or your potential job.
This is why you have to pick really, really carefully. The state of the industry, I'll not call it an industry, it's a profession. They treat it like an industry. The state of the profession is such that there is such competition between individuals that have pushed down wages, that mean there's more coaches than jobs, that people will jump on the first opportunity that they get to work with any team, when really it's like a marriage. You know, you are going to be, for better or worse, probably married to that head coach professionally for quite a while. I don't advise it, but that's what's going to happen. You're going to end up being X's guy, and you have to pick really, really carefully to ensure that you have a sport coach that actually understands what you're about, values your contribution, is willing to give up some control, so that you can make them look smarter and better than they are. Or not better than they are, but make them look smarter and make them be more effective on the field. So you actually have to be quite careful in the environments that you choose to work in. You have to look at what people are saying about that environment, those coaches, all that kind of stuff. And I think you really have to do a job early on to set the tone of what the relationship's going to be and what your vision is going to be, because there's a lot of examples of coaches out there that have been with, particularly in America, been with a particular sport coach for a number of years. And then it just becomes an assumption that, oh, this is the way we're going to do it. Well, what if the way that you're doing is actually quite shit? You need to dramatically look at what you're doing and then change how the system is run. And I think this is an aside. You must build secondary income streams into your career in order to be anti-fragile or be robust enough to those environments. Because I talked about this at a thing I did in the UK like last month. Whenever you are negotiating or trying to get something from other people, which is persuasion, and that's basically the job, you must negotiate from a position of strength, never from a position of weakness. And them knowing that you cannot walk away is a position of weakness. So if a business has one customer, that business is run by an idiot, because you've only got to have that one customer fire your business and you're out of business. You are in the business of Ben. I am in the business of Keir. If you have one customer, which is the school or the club that hires you, you are one firing away from your career being over. If you have a side business or another stream of income with 100 clients, and the school fires you or the club fires you, you got 99, or you got 100 clients left. Or one, even one client on the private side that fires you, you got 99 left. And that allows you to have that position of strength, to be willing to walk away when the environment is not right, when the job's not right, and it allows you to be more selective in what you're trying to do. And the problem to that is it's hard to do. People just want that one job and they want to go home and then not worry about work.
Is partly that kind of the ambition to do as much as possible, because you know an awful lot about strength and conditioning, you know an awful lot about the psychology of the game, of the player, of the athlete, but you also read a lot on personal development as a whole, on business. You have a very broad skill set. Is that through desire? Is it through ambition? Is it through that you've realised that actually to be the best that I can be, just being good at programming for strength, power, speed, etc., that's actually not enough to make me the best in the environment that I want to be the best in?
Nowhere near enough. Nowhere near enough. Writing a good program is completely unremarkable. It's common. It's not scarce. People pay for scarce and uncommon and desirable. So it's just like, I think I wrote this down. I haven't published it yet. It's an ebook. So I wrote it down. The Michelin star restaurant and the cafe down the road have exactly the same access to ingredients that you do. The difference is in the execution and the understanding and how the ingredients work together. So people aren't looking, or no, they don't know it, but they aren't looking for a good programmer. They're looking for a communicator, a problem solver, somebody that has a deep understanding of what everyone in the building is trying to do, how the pieces work together. They're looking for somebody that can persuade others, because unless you work in North Korea, everything you're trying to achieve hinges upon somebody saying yes to you, whether above you or below you in the organization. And that is the stuff that is scarce and difficult to do. And that is stuff that you aren't going to learn in NSCA Essentials, because they're not specific to strength and conditioning. And also, I think you need to look at fields that are much older than sport, with more accountability and higher consequences for failure. So this is why I think if you look at business, or you look at military, industry, medicine, aviation, these are huge industries, older industries or professions or fields with massive consequences for failure. If you have a sports team that fail, you can blame it on the weather. You can blame it on, oh, they didn't listen to me. You can shrug your shoulders and say, oh, it's just the, rolling the dice. There's actually a lot of wiggle room in sport when it's fairly low consequence and it's not a long field, not an old field. So I think the extent to which you can learn from sport is somewhat limited.
Going a little bit deeper, I suppose, in a kind of poignant life question, do you think a lot of people are naive about what it takes to become, let's say, world class in anything? Because, I remember doing my personal training courses, qualifications, nutrition exams, I did all of that. And then at the end of it, you're like, yeah, I'm a brilliant coach. I've read the books, I've done the exam. And I was absolutely, when I compare myself now to where I was back then, I was absolutely dog shit. Like, I didn't understand people, didn't understand how to run my business, didn't understand how to be organised. Like, there's all these different things, and we kind of almost think that, and maybe it's kind of like the old school degree culture. Like, you get a degree and you've made it. Like, you've sewn up that bit of paper that gets you in a door. Do you think people are quite naive about what it takes to excel?
I'll say, I was talking to my mum about this because I've got a kid now.
Mm-hmm.
Her big thing when I was growing up, she said, you can be a street sweeper if you want, but you're going to be a street sweeper with a degree, because our parents' generation came from a generation where a degree was a ticket to a better life. Because I want to say it was definitely in the US, around the 70s, it was 14% of people had a degree. So it was scarce and it was valuable. And if you look at the ability to access knowledge pre-internet, there was literally knowledge that you couldn't get your hands on. Mm. And if you look at the industries and the fields that people were working in, a lot more predictable, a lot less interconnected, and a lot slower turnover of information. Go to where you are now, a degree is absolutely worthless other than ticking off a box for a recruiter. Minimum 50% of people have a degree. So when everyone's got it, no, it's not special. Mm. If you look at the fields that we're working in, information is constantly updating. The information on actually how to do a job is widely available. Anyone can learn how to do anything. Stanford and Harvard put up courses online for free. We don't have an information problem. We have an implementation problem, an ability to process information and problem solve. So that's why it's different, I think.
Mm. I love questions like that, because obviously this podcast is very much focused around personal development and being the best that you can be. And I remember when I was writing my book, How to Be an Awesome Personal Trainer, and so many trainers picked it up and were like, oh, so I'll learn lots of more like advanced training and nutrition stuff. And I'm like, nope, you won't learn any of that. You'll learn how to be a better coach. You learn how I was an asshole and I led with my ego and I thought I knew everything, and actually until I understood people and how people actually behave, it was only then that I really started to scratch the surface of becoming a better coach. And you've brought up communication a lot, like persuasion a lot, like everything that we're trying to do, we're trying to get somewhere, we're trying to get a result. That means we've got to communicate with people, we've got to make them understand where we're coming from. That person's got to understand where you're coming from to be able to help you in a more meaningful way. And actually, in the information age, at the rate in which we can access information, I notice, especially with social media, no one takes the time to understand anything. And so much context is lost. Like, you've talked about, seeing clips of famous athletes doing workouts on Instagram, and, you said, oh, so-and-so's program's a load of shit. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Are we even spending enough time understanding the context? Probably not.
Here's an example, right? Everyone ripped into LeBron James. He signed for the Lakers, and his guy put up a clip of LeBron James, I think it's back squatting, let's call it 70 kilos. And was like, oh, fucking, NBA MVP championship winner, he can only squat 70 kilos. I say, right, he's just come off an 80-plus game season, having played around 30 minutes a game. He's in his early 30s. He's 6'7", so he's not mobile. Mm. And traditionally, basketball players are allergic to iron and sweat. He's just signed a $100 million contract. Do you want to be the trainer with an ego that tried to get him to squat a 1RM at the end of the season? Fuck his contract. What's that going to do to your business? What's that going to do to LeBron James? Mm. That's the context that people miss.
Mm. So in the fitness industry, what can we learn from strength and conditioning? Where do you think we can apply principles of strength and conditioning in our own environment? Because, it can almost be a little bit, I don't know, almost overwhelming if you look at a traditional gym program and then you hear someone on a podcast or a video talking about strength and speed and power, and then we break strength down into its, we can talk about relative strength, max strength. Like, where does the real everyday person start to take some of these principles and actually usefully implement them, as opposed to taking a more generalized approach to training that maybe a personal trainer would look to implement?
It depends on what you're trying to do. I think, how would I phrase this? Is this for trainers or for people training?
People training, which I think personal trainers can learn from that response.
Personal trainers and people training need to understand that they do not have an information problem. Okay, the information's out there, you know where to find it. They have an information filtering and they have a behavior problem. You are not going to sit any layperson down and be like, oh, the reason you're overweight is that you consume too much food, too much alcohol, you don't go to bed, and your lifestyle sucks. And they'll be like, oh my God, I thought those Mr. Kipling cakes were going to help me lose fat. They know already that it's not helping them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the behavior modification, getting them to. Have you ever read Switch?
I haven't, no.
It's about behavior modification, and they basically describe behavior modification as like a man on an elephant working its way through the jungle. The man is your logical brain, the elephant is your emotional brain, and the jungle is the pathway to achieve your goals. That little man can beat the elephant all he wants. The elephant's probably going to go where he wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
If the path is clear, it makes it easier for the elephant. It's probably going to walk down that path. If it's blocked or there are easier paths elsewhere, it's probably going to take that path. So really what you have to do is, if you want behavior change, shape the environment to make the most appropriate choice, the easiest choice to take, motivate the emotional brain with what it craves the most. So it may be, you give the elephant food or you put a mate in front of it, whatever. Find out what it is that motivates people's emotional brain to achieve the goals that they want. And that may be self-image, acceptance, group cohesion. That's the only reason CrossFit's such a successful business, is group identity and cohesion. Us and them, that's it. It's not the training. And then small pieces of information for the logical brain where those gaps exist. Everybody has a fairly informed rider on top of their elephant. They just have an unwilling elephant and a blocked path. So I think that's one thing that people need to understand about behavior change and achieving goals. And then I think general people on the street, robustness and speciality or specialism are two opposing ends of the spectrum, right? So if you're a general person on the street, you want to be robust, you don't want to break, you want to be able to meet lots of different challenges and demands in the environment, right? So think about this. It's probably not true now, but the fastest production car in the world, Bugatti Veyron, right? 260 plus miles an hour. If the zombie apocalypse happened tomorrow, would you want to be in a Veyron or a Toyota Hilux?
Probably a big Arctic truck.
Yeah. There's a reason the Taliban are driving Toyota pickups and not Veyrons or sports cars. It's because they sacrifice some elite performance in order to be able to meet broad demands, unpredictable environments, all that kind of stuff. So if you're a general person, you probably want to do that because specialization means you're more likely to break, and it means you're less prepared for broad, unpredictable environments. So you should probably learn how to chuck some stuff, jump, sprint, lift some heavy shit, do some high rep stuff, learn how to carry stuff, manipulate other people, wrestle, learn how to control your own body in space in all different directions, one leg and two, tumble, climb, swim, run. So you're just trying to make sure that you're doing a bunch of different stuff, that you're prepared to do different things. And if at any one time that you want to increase one of those areas, maybe you pull back in others and you invest a little bit more in that particular area that interests you. But it's a good idea to do a lot of stuff and never get too far away from one particular thing and never be too specialized unless you have a sport which demands it. And that's what Nassim Taleb would call the barbell strategy.
Okay. I absolutely love that you've said that, because in previous podcasts, I remember I did a podcast on powerlifting, and I had to do a 2-part episode because a lot of people got really irate at my perspective, because at the time powerlifting was something that, like, it just felt like everyone was doing, like, you know, squat, bench, deadlift in the gym and stuff. And I saw an awful lot of especially female lifters like grinding out all this time in the gym, and then being pissed off at the end of the week that, you know, they've maybe lifted a little bit of something, you know, they've made 2.5 kilo gain in their deadlift or something, but they hadn't really improved their body composition. They felt quite tired at the end of the week. Their joints were a little bit sore. And I really kind of got stuck into it. And I'm like, I bet you, I promise you 60, 80, 90% of the people that are following these training programs really don't want that as an outcome. You don't.
It's because their coach wants them to do it.
Pardon?
It's because their coach wants them to do it.
Yeah, or they've seen someone strong on Instagram that looked fucking cool, and you know, and also for me it's almost an identity thing as well. It's like, if you're not really sure what you're doing in the gym, you can go, oh, I'm a powerlifter and I lift heavy shit, and that's kind of cool. And I'm like, it's not cool if you're not really getting to the place that you want to be, if you're not optimizing your body composition, if you're not any fitter. Like, do you want to be the person that can't even go up 6 flights of stairs and not be panting and sweating? I'm like, really? You want that?
Mate, even, it's been a long time since I've worked with the general population, so I'll assume this about them. But even athletes, especially elite athletes, want to feel good. Being an elite athlete is extremely hard on your body. I always joke, show me an elite athlete who's not in pain for the rest of their life when they retire, and I'll show you a bench warmer. So pro athletes get beat up. They want to feel good, physically and mentally, if nothing else, and then you can start to build from there. I spoke to an athlete here. He's a quarterback, so people come after him 50, 60, 70 times a game to try and flatten him. And he's, you know, his jumps haven't really gone anywhere per se. He's gaining 10 pounds in lean tissue. That's probably why. But he says he's got a smile on his face. He loves what we're doing. He said, I've never felt this good. And I was like, well, you know, I'd love for the jumps to go up, but really the first, you know, if they think and feel good, they're probably going to play good. So I'll take that to begin with, and we can build on that.
Nice. Dude, I need to wrap this conversation up. I said I would make sure we kept this to an hour. There's been some beautiful gems in today's show, and I hope people get why we've talked about strength and conditioning and being in the gym and athletics and the way that we've talked about it, because I, like you, always want people to see the bigger picture, and I think we can lose ourselves in the details a lot. And I know when I follow really, really specific programming, I get frustrated quite quickly because I can feel myself detracting in other areas of my life. Like, I've been trying to gain some mass recently, and I was in the gym today and I was like, oh, I feel weaker today. And it wasn't that I felt weaker, it's that my work capacity had gone down because I'm out of season for rugby, and just my level of overall fitness is sort of in the toilet. You know, I haven't been for a jog in like 7 weeks, haven't played any sport. I did a little bit of quick cricket the other day, and it was nothing to do with my strength. It's just my ability to work hard for a decent amount of time is just in the toilet. And I kind of really respect having a broad training program, and I think that's why I've been, I'm not going to say pro CrossFit, but you know, a lot of people have, you know, hated on CrossFit, and I'm like, hey, at least these people can lift some heavy shit, run, go for a swim, jump a bit, crawl on some stuff. Mate, that's life skills.
Just don't train with such moronic volume and intensity. I joke that CrossFit is like trying to swat a fly with a hand grenade. It's like, oh, I killed the fly. Yeah, well, you also fucking blew up your house.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. Dude, I want people to be able to find what you do. I know you've got a couple of great side businesses that aim to help coaches and aim to put some quality information out there. So the floor's yours. Like, let people know where they need to go and what some of the cool shit you do is.
So I would say rugby players, rugbystrengthcoach.com. Tons of info on there. if you are a strength and conditioning coach or you come from other sports and you like to learn, I'd say probably more about the concepts that we talked about this last hour. It would be strengthcoachnetwork.com, and you can find me there. You can search my name on Google, any of that stuff, or you can search rugby strength conditioning. I'll probably be at the top. Humble brag, and you can find me there.
Dude, thank you so much. For people that want to find those links, I will put them in the show description so they are easily found. If you have someone that you know that is interested in what we've spoken about today, works in sport, likes sport, trains in the gym, wants to expand their horizon on this kind of fitness stuff, then please do invite them to the show. Tag them in the post on social media, send it to them via email. It doesn't matter how you do it. Just share the love. Keir's been amazing at giving up his time and shared some pearls today. So, yeah, that would be awesome. Dude, thank you very much. You've been up since what, like 4:30 this morning?
4:30. Never have children.
I don't have any yet.
There you go, that you know of.
Yes, let's keep it that way. I've heard they're very expensive.
They can be.
Is yours not because you just don't feed them, don't clothe them, maybe keep them in the garage?
Oh no, it's he's proving to be a little bit expensive to keep going. But he's my little anchor baby. Donald can't get rid of me.
Nice. Well, dude, thank you very much for giving up your time. You've been an awesome guest. For everyone that's listening, I hope you've enjoyed the show. I will see you on the short Monday episode, and next week we will have another incredible guest. In the meantime, you only have one job to do for the rest of today. Go and have an awesome day. Goodbye.